Hello, I'm Professor Braden Trouth, an assistant professor of industrial design at the University of Cincinnati at the College of DAP. I'll be presenting about designing for complex change, lessons learned from designing the world's first regenerative farming certification approved by the USPTO. So global sustainability issues are complex and intertwined, as we can see here with this graphic. However, the discovery of permaculture design philosophy helped me see that it is possible to resolve them and be a positive force for life on Earth. Here in this graphic, we see permaculture's three ethics, exemplified by earth care, people care, and fair share, which I'll come back to later, as well as the 12 principles put forth by David Holmgren, one of the co-originators of the permaculture design concept. So what is permaculture? At its core, it's an ethical, ecological design philosophy, is the way that I define it. And I also like to say it's human-centered design meets ecological living. And so if we think about how human-centered design works and then integrate ecological living, it really brings together what permaculture is. So the permaculture design process for change really begins through empowering individuals to transition to a sustainable lifestyle, beginning at home. It teaches how to produce for all of our needs in an ecological way that enhances the Earth's productive capacity. And here we see some designs using the permaculture design process and some end results in the image in the top left. So in short, it mimics nature. And so how does nature invest its limited energy? Healthy ecosystems invest converted primary resources, be it sun, nutrients, water, air, etc., into the creation of soil, which is a form of energy, hydrological stability, which brings water and stabilizes water, interconnection, which brings resilience, and then genetic diversity, which creates resilient productivity. And this is all to increase productivity and ultimately mutualism. So why not begin designing a permaculture farm certification, which is what me and my colleagues did after teaching permaculture for several years and training many students. This farm certification would allow consumers to support the development of permaculture farms and leverage permaculture's impact. And the name that we came up with was Permaganic Authenticated. And that's based on the combination of permaculture and organic. And you can see the three ethics here as well: earth care, people care, fair share, which I'll come back to. But how can we reduce the complexity? By founding it in those three ethics, in permaculture's three ethics, and also to make it accessible by mimicking nature's progression from bare soil up to a mature forest, which in the top here we can see it starts off in a pioneer setting, and that is the first level of the certification. The second and the first level shows that you're implementing core foundational processes to move towards the emergent level. And then the regenerative level is the highest level. And traditionally, ecosystems at their highest level are called climax ecosystems, but we felt regenerative was a more appropriate term. We also concluded that it would be best to follow permaculture's three ethics for our areas of certification, which, as I mentioned previously, is earth care, which includes agriculture, focuses on agriculture, people care, which focuses on the built and social environments, and fair share, which includes the ecological and social balance. And so these three ethics really lay the foundation of a sustainable society as permaculture lays out. And combining it with good design. So we worked with professional graphic designers that had done work for some large Fortune 500 companies, and they came up with this graphic design proposal here, as well as our logo, after we worked with them on many different aspects of it, coming up with the ideas around it. However, nature is diverse, and this image really depicts that complexity, running from deserts to forests, from dry lands to, which is dry lands to humid climates, and from hot climates to cold climates. And farming is complex. And these are just some images of different types of farming around the US, be it livestock in the top left, be it orchards in the top right, annual farming for staple crops in the bottom right, like corn and soybeans, and in the bottom left is orcharding, could be nut orchards or other types of orchards. And these are all in the industrial model. So they require a lot of inputs and typically 10 calories for every 1 calorie of output, depending on the crop. However, you get into permaculture farming and it's even more complex. And this is a colleague's farm up in Wisconsin, a gentleman named Mark Shepard, who's written a book called Restoration Agriculture. And he has 160 acres where he is implementing permaculture farming and has been for the last 30 years. And also, permaculture building is complex as well. So these systems are not easy to pin down because of their complexity, but it's just like nature. Nature is a very complex system with many moving parts. And if we can understand how it works, then we can also start to convey, mimic it, farm like it, live like it, and then also convey it to the public to allow other people to step in and support it. So another aspect that's critical is understanding the climatic factors, as we saw in a previous slide, and also successful ecological adaptation methods within those climatic regions is critical. So every region will have different processes responding to the climatic factors and the resources. And this graphic here by Holdridge really conveys that breakout of, from Arctic or polar all the way down to tropical, and dry lands all the way up to humid climates. And founding it all on good ecological science is critical. So understanding how nature works and replicating that in our cultivated systems. And that's what Dr. Elaine Ingham put together this graphic for the USDA and NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which explains how the soil food web works in natural ecosystems, and then translating that into agricultural systems. And Dr. Ingham was actually a backer of Permaganic Authenticated and has been on our board of advisors as well. So, and then packaging all this into good design so that consumers can understand it in a simple way. But behind each certification is complex systems. So here we have the emergent level, the regenerative level, and here we have the logo or the certification mark as it progresses from each level. And each set of 3 leaves represents earth care, people care, or fair share. And so we have the pioneer level on the left, the emergent in the middle, and regenerative on the right, which brings together the full color logo to convey to consumers that this farm has reached the highest standard. And this helps customers understand the benefits to help them participate in the investment of ecological restoration on these farms. And permaculture has been known to reverse desertification, stop soil erosion, sequester significant amounts of carbon, recharge water cycles and the water table, increase biodiversity, reduce fossil fuel use and let nature do the work, and potentially bolster local economies and support for the people in need, as well as spreading knowledge and increase nutrient-dense food. For growers, there's a lot of benefits, which include restoring their lands and restoring them for generations to come to make them productive and stable. So, and this is some of our marketing and outreach, and also the certification that comes to each farm once they're certified. This was actually the first certified farm from 12 years ago, or about 11 years, a little over 11 and a half years ago. So But we had the opportunity, and this is actually our certified farms as of 12 years ago. We have a more updated list on our website, but we had the opportunity to amplify it more through the support of Dr. Ingham, who was the head scientist at the time at the Rodale Institute. So she proposed a collaboration with the Rodale Institute. And as designers, we could have had a non-disclosure agreement or not have a non-disclosure agreement. And this idea was such a large idea and such a complex idea that we wondered whether our small organization, consisting of a few people and very little resources in Cincinnati, could successfully launch such a program. So we decided not to have them sign an NDA, and that laid out a process that would unfold in the coming years. But part of it was, Rodale was a major force in bringing organic agriculture to the U.S. from 1940 to the year 2000. However, what we concluded was that this idea was too important for us to keep it bound up in legal protections. After all, the climate clock really is ticking on all of us. So we skipped it. And we concluded that if they didn't want to collaborate with us, which turned out to be the case, the pitch was received well, and they did say they would collaborate with us, and then they backed out and rejected it, which was unfortunate. So we continued to work on it for another 4 years with our limited resources to gain the USPTO certification mark approval, or the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office approval, which came in March of 2017, and it was the first certification mark of its type, which in order to achieve this, we had to lay out many documents, standard operating procedures, all kinds of documents that would explain how a farm gets certified and many if-then scenarios for legal purposes. So certification marks are a much more complex process than a traditional trademark, but this is what is required to achieve a certification mark. So we went ahead and did it. However, over those 4 years, after we got approval, Rodale actually launched a similar program 6 months later with industry and government funding. They had a lot more capacity than us. They were able to get a $250,000 NSF grant because of their reputation. And they also got big names such as Patagonia on board, as well as Dr. Bronner's and Horizon Organic Milk. But ultimately, their program was very similar to ours, and which was flattering. But also we found that it was watered down from what we had originally proposed. So we had originally proposed those 3 ethics: earth care, people care, fair share, and progressing from pioneer, emergent to regenerative. Theirs progresses from bronze, silver to gold. Their 3 pillars, as you can see here, is soil health, animal welfare, and social welfare. So the social welfare, similar to the fair share, the soil health is similar to the earth care, as well as the animal welfare is also a little bit similar to the first principle as well, but they skip out on the people care aspect. So, and you can also see the similarities in their logo as well, with the 3 leaves and in a circular pattern. But nonetheless, we were flattered, but we did feel that it was watered down. And the question for us was, did they meet the mark of permaculture or even of drawdown? Drawdown.org is a website that identifies the top 80 strategies to reverse climate change in the next 30 years. And many strategies that permaculture teaches are on this list. And that was a question that we had to answer. And ultimately, we concluded that they weren't quite meeting the mark. Regenerative Organic Certified is inching towards it, which is great, but they weren't quite meeting that benchmark. And throughout that time, over those years, since we've launched, there's been another certification that launched, as well as some that we found out. Well, one that we were familiar with, which was the FSC certified, or Forestry Stewardship Council certified forestry, but that only does forestry or timber. The Living Building Challenge became aware to, or came to our attention a year or 2 after we launched, which was very similar to the Earthship buildings that I used to build myself and used to own one, working with the Earthship crew in Taos, New Mexico, which is a fully off-grid building made of tires, cans, and bottles, solar powered, harvests its own rainwater and recycles it 4 times, grows food off that wastewater, and heats the building by the sun and cools it by the earth. The Living Building Challenge took some of those ideas and it required it to be in an urban setting, a walkable setting with edible landscaping and producing more energy than it consumes and more water than it consumes. So very similar. And we had incorporated this green building aspect within Permaganic Authenticated under the people care aspect with our permaculture authentication. And then we have Regenerative Organic certified, and then Land to Market verified. We had actually approached one of the representatives from Holistic Management International and asked for their backing, and they said they would. But then, due to our lack of resources, we weren't able to really follow up successfully. And over time, they eventually launched their own verified Land to Market, which is another great certification, similar to Regenerative Organic. So, asking these deep questions, do these other certifications meet the goals we set out to achieve? And if so, do we need to exist? And that was a deep question to ask. And as we went through, as you can see here, these are the core things that our certification verifies. The net zero housing, which Living Building Challenge does. And the other aspect is farming that produces food but mimics the ecosystems, especially the most productive ones on Earth, including forests, prairies, which Land to Market, or LTM, does verify with regenerative grazing practices specifically. Maybe not per se prairies completely, but very similar, depending on the climate and ecosystem. And then savannas and wetlands as well. And then also that it supports plant and animal diversity, similar to, which is what permaculture focuses on. It incorporates permanent water management systems, which is another aspect of permaculture built upon the keyline design process out of Australia by P.A. Yeoman. And also builds on soil and sequesters carbon in soil, which Regenerative Organic Certified does, as well as Land to Market. But we also have educational systems that educate the public and train future farmers as part of our people care ethic. And then for the fair share, we have societal fair share and ecological restoration as well. So as you can see, there are still holes in all these certifications that our certification fulfills. So that also made us ask ourselves, are our standards too high? Ultimately, with climate change and understanding the limits of the earth, really drive us forward with these high standards, especially with understanding the work of Howard T. Odum around ecology, energy, and systems theory. Humanity is really reaching the limits of the earth. We've heard this from many scientists in the last 40 or 50 years. And as humans take more resources than the earth can produce, we realize the importance of a certification like Permaganic Authenticated in verifying that farms are restoring landscapes while also producing resources to fulfill human needs as well as ecological needs and ecosystemic needs and the earth's needs ultimately. And to go back to Howard Odum and the work that he did around that energy theory, it really helps you, his work really helps us understand what humans are doing on Earth. And David Holmgren, one of the co-originators of permaculture, really put forth, really references a lot of his work. This is a quote from Howard Odum, which is, "Systems that survive are those which get the most energy and use energy most effectively in competition with other systems." And given the long-term vision, we feel that permaculture and its practices will teach humans and humanity how to effectively use that energy and define a more sustainable system in the long run. Another question we had is, can these farms be financially viable to warrant the certification? Because we have a challenge finding farms that are large enough and financially stable enough to get it certified. With that answer, we really concluded that it's a yes and no. The systems that exist out there right now in farming are not where Permaganic is aiming to certify farms at. So there really needs to be more market development of perennial products, which is possible. One colleague of ours, a gentleman named Chris Schmiel, who owns Integration Acres in Athens, Ohio, has created a market where there wasn't one in Ohio for our native fruit, the pawpaw, which is easy to grow in regenerative ways and a market that continues to grow year after year. And so as we bring in these perennial food sources that mimic natural systems, especially food forest systems or regenerative agricultural systems, if you will, Permaganic can serve, we can develop the markets for those crops and help humanity support those crops economically that are grown on these farms. And so Chris Schmiel is one of many cases that really show that the potential of the economic opportunity is there. Another question we had is are there large enough markets to make it financially viable for us to have enough certified farms to really run a business or a nonprofit? And ultimately, the market really continues to grow and is projected to grow. General Mills had proposed 5 years ago to advance regenerative agriculture practices on over 1 million acres of farmland by 2030. General Mills owns Cascadian Farms, which is a large organic cereal producer. And then this graph is from the Croatan Institute, which identified $2 billion, well, out of the $321 billion organic food and agriculture investment opportunities, there's $47 billion in regenerative agriculture investment opportunities and $2 billion in potential certified regenerative farm annual sales in a decade. So that would be about 1.7 in certification costs. So this really underscores the potential of the market that we're proposing. So it's not there yet, but it's projected to grow, and it does continue to grow. So despite these challenges, we know that our idealism, founded in science and systems design, in order to address complex challenges, is foundational in creating a sustainable world. These human systems continue to evolve through dedicated people to meet the needs that will resolve not just the climate crisis, but also the ecological crisis humans have generated over the last 10,000 years. So these are complex systems to address complex issues around sustainability. And through good design, you can see that we can make these systems change towards the better. And it really takes a lot of systems thinking, be it economic, be it ecological, be it social systems, be it agricultural systems as well. And so, but through good research and through good design, you can see how these problems are addressable and hopefully can help other designers understand how to take on complex challenges and really address them. Thank you. And for any questions, feel free to contact me at braden.trouth@uc.edu, or you can also visit my website, mutualisticdesign.com. You can also find me on the CG network as well, Common Ground Network. And I thank you for your time.